Michael, the last game, you couldn't get one much closer to home, really, could you, for your last away match? But how's training gone this week?
Yeah, training's been good. We shortened the week for them a little bit. 3-day lead into the game, and the players are obviously very tired mentally, I think, as much as physically, and but it's been fine. But we've got one or two little injury concerns that I think we probably will have maybe one or two more players out for the game on Saturday than we hope would be the case.
How hard is it to get the players up for a match where ostensibly you're only going to finish between 13th and 15th? It must be difficult.
Look, it is in a sense, but we haven't changed our approach to how we've prepared the team. We've prepared the team on a similar level of detail, a similar level of training, similar level of professionalism as we did, in the opening games of the season, and indeed any game since we've come into the building. So hopefully that keeps their focus and that translates into a good performance. We recognise that results in recent times in the second half of the season haven't been good enough, and we want to make sure that we can try and address that as soon as possible. And this is the next game; it's the last game, but it gives us an opportunity to try and go and win the game, or at least take something from the game.
You noticed a lot of good things in play on Saturday. You mentioned Timon and Rhys Norris and Davies down the left, for example. Is it more a problem of self-belief in the second half of the season, given the results? Do you need to work more on the mental side of the game with the younger players?
I think the mental side of the game's there for all players, but particularly with the young players. And, it's been a good season for young players possibly to be introduced because there's not been the crowd there, for example. And they have to, that will be the biggest thing that they're going to have to adapt to going forward. Playing in front of your own fans, and with that, the expectation that comes with that as well. So, yeah, I think mentally, yeah, possibly as the mental. We looked at all aspects. We had a meeting today with the players about the difference between how we've been first half of the season, second half of the season, and tried to pinpoint, why we've had the second half of the season that we've had, how we can address it going forward, what the players feel about that, what we feel about that as a staff. And we just got to continue to believe that we can progress. I think there's a good feeling within the group still. They're disappointed with how the second half of the season has gone, but as I say, we our focus is to make sure that however we finish the season, that we don't bring that into the start of next season.
It's probably a common fact, better than me, that when you're younger and you come into a side, you probably get anxious when you make mistakes.
Yeah, but that's part of the game. You have to deal with making mistakes. What we kind of hammer home to the players is, if you have a bad decision on the ball, or you have a bad moment in the game, is that you have a good reaction to that. And the senior players are important in that as well. That they help the younger players on the pitch, and they're fortunate that they've got people like John Obi and people like Stephen Fletcher and James Chester, for example. Those players, and Joe Allen, who've been through that. They've all made mistakes in their careers as well. And I think the young players now have a good support network within the club, within the dressing room, to hopefully help them all reach their potential.
I appreciate most of the players, in fact, all but one, are still contracted next year. How close are you to deciding who's in your plans for the first team next season and who you need to replace?
Well, I've known that for quite a while, to be honest. But we have we have 32 players under contract from the 1st of July, with the players who've been away from the club returning. So we have to obviously continue to address that, as we have done in the previous windows. And we know we're not going to change massive changes to the squad because we'll be somewhat hindered by that a little bit. But we're going to try and add key players in the right areas to hopefully help us. But equally, we have to streamline the squad first of all to help us, give us the best chance to get the best players in to help us improve.
So on to injuries. How are you looking for the last game?
Well, with no one back, I don't think that Powell will make the game, and both Harry Souttar and Stephen Fletcher came out of training today with stiffness and tightness, and are both will have to be scanned later today. But we're not optimistic that either will be fit for the game either on Saturday.
Summing up on the season, you got to the quarterfinal of the Carabao Cup. You got some of the younger players through that system to become fixtures in the team, like Collins and Suter. And just because the second half of the season hasn't been great, you must be optimistic going forward, given that you'll think there's been quite a lot of improvements.
Well, I think there's been improvement. I mean, the second half of the season for me has not been what I anticipated or what I had hoped for, obviously, after 23 games. You know, I felt that we were in a good position then to try and, you know, replicate that in the second half of the season, to kick on and push closer to be a team that can challenge to be in the top six. But we weren't able to do that. There's a number of factors in that. We didn't obviously win enough games. We drew too many games, and then latterly we started to lose games. I think at times, you know, for portions of the game, particularly in the first half of games, we were strong. Our performance was good, but we didn't capitalize on that. And then ultimately, you know, we tended to lose a goal, and we found it difficult then to fight our way back into games. So that's something that we have to look to improve on and address. And some of that's mental, some of that's down to quality. Some of that's down to a little bit of anxiety, particularly in the final third of the pitch. I think we saw that particularly in the QPR game. And that's something that, again, hopefully we experience the younger players benefit from that. And equally, you know, there's responsibility on the older players to do better in those situations as well.
Already people are talking about players such as Joe Allen maybe moving on. And I'm sure you'll hear lots of stories about all the players before the season commences again next August. Do you find that a frustration, or do you just accept it as part of the game?
Yeah, it's just accept it as part of the game. It's just, I ignore that, to be honest. It's nothing like that means anything until there's a firm offer on the table from a club for one of our players. You know, we have a situation where, as I say, we've 32 players under contract, but and 18 of those players are coming into the last year of their contract as well. So, you know, that in itself changes the dynamic from players who are possibly have come here on longer term deals, are now in the final year of their contract. So yeah, there'll always be a lot of speculation, but like anything, that's all it is. It's typically made up by people who need something to write about and need something for managers to comment on. But ultimately, at the end of the day, we're in a position that, you know, unless the right offer comes in for the right player, then we won't have to entertain it.
Well, for the last time this season, good luck. Thank you.
Thanks, Angela.
Thanks, Ange. George now, please.
Michael, obviously both clubs know their fate in terms of where they're going to be next season. Bournemouth probably don't in terms of because they're in the playoffs. But you approach the game, as you already said, looking to win it. But they know where they're going to be. Do you feel they're going to maybe ease off to look at maybe the playoffs? Do you see that coming into their game?
No, I don't actually, because they've lost, I think, the last two games. So I think they'll want to finish the season strong with a strong performance, and they'll pick a strong team because they won't want to go into the playoff games possibly off, you know, poor form. So I think they'll approach the game with the intent to win it. They'll pick a strong team. They'll obviously not take any chances with players who may be carrying little injuries or niggles. But yeah, whatever team they put in the pitch will be very strong because, as I say, they kept their squad together that they came down from the Premier League with. You know, obviously sold, you know, Callum Wilson, I think, was a big departure. But equally, they've got a quality squad, and they have the motivation to try and get back to the Premier League.
And that's the way you will approach the game as well, wouldn't it? With your team, you want to go out on a high.
Yeah, we've had poor results in recent weeks, and you know, when you're in that situation, you have to try and address it. And you know, the game on Saturday gives us a chance to try and address it. It'll be a very, very tough game. I think as tough as you can get in this division, to be honest. Away at Bournemouth, Norwich, and Watford, I would look and say are the three toughest games you'll get. So it'll be a test for us, but you know, one that we can go. You know, we're not playing under any pressure, nor are they. But we want a good performance and hopefully a good result.
You touched briefly on fatigue momentarily, Michael, but certain managers, particularly within the Premier League, have been saying their players, because of the rotation and the amount of games, because of the unprecedented circumstances within, they're in the red zone, they're calling it. Have you found that with your players, that, you know, because of the impact of it, the COVID, and obviously the games right on top of each other every Saturday, Tuesday during the course of this short period in this season. Have you found that? Because one or two managers are saying that's what, and we don't want that to happen again.
Yeah, that's definitely been the case. I think you only have to look at the amount of injuries that we've had, and that's a big factor in it. The Championship is more demanding than the Premier League because there's more games. And, you know, I would say that, you know, it's the teams at the top end who are playing European football as well that have got massive schedules to deal with. But they do have massive squads as well with a lot of quality in that squad. But it has been extremely demanding. And, you know, what you're wanting at this stage is, you know, like we're running a little bit on empty at the minute with the number of injuries that we have, is that we don't pick up anything in the last game that carries forward into starting next season. So, you know, when we start next season, we hope to have, you know, Alan and Collins and people like that fully fit, fully ready to come and play. And as a result of that, we'll be a stronger squad.
So you want to retain your top players, irrespective of the numbers you've got in the building at the moment then, Michael, the players you've just suggested. Of course, Alan and all those players, you want to retain those.
We won't be giving players away, but like, as I say, we may have to trade at times, but you can't trade unless someone's looking to buy you. So that's not something we're going to encourage, but equally, if something happens along those lines, we have to evaluate any situation on any player at this minute in time to try and, you know, freshen the squad, strengthen the squad in certain areas. But again, until that happens, well, obviously we're not going to be in a position to do anything. And if it does happen, we'll deal with it when it comes along.
The recruitment side, you've obviously got I suppose really the ducks in a row, more ways than one, but it's all about keeping the young players on side as well, Michael, isn't it? And maybe looking towards their future and introducing them into first team football.
Well, the young players that we have at the minute who are in the team, if you include Suter and Collins, and Bursick, time and less so in terms of contract, Campbell, Doughty that we've brought to the club, Brown that we've brought to the club, they're all on long-term contracts. So their focus is here at Stoke City, and they've committed to that, and hopefully they grow and flourish here as well. I think as regards, you know, what we do in the transfer window, it'll be governed by what happens in terms of what happens with our own squad and people leaving as well. So it's you know, the young players now they're a good situation. They have stability at the club. They have, you know, stability of contracts as well. But now they have to come in and become not only just established Championship players, they have to become top end Championship players, because that's the only way that the club can progress and push to be in a promotion situation. The younger players who have been on the bench in recent weeks are not ready, and I repeat this, many are not ready to play first team football. They're there because of the injury situation that we have at the club. They need loans. I think it's nice to have them up training with us as much as possible. But like, as I said, like with Suter, Campbell's a good example of this as well. Timon is a good example of this. Bursick is a good example. They all had to go on loan to develop to become first team players. And for Norton and Coates and Jones and all these young players, they have to go through the same experience, I think, to come back and be closer to the first team.
Is the loan market that you would pursue then, as we look towards the start of next season, is that an area that you would pursue, first of all, Michael, in terms of maybe not bringing players in permanently?
It would be difficult for us to bring players in permanently because of the financial fair play. The loan market is obviously there to use. It was a difficult market this year because the Premier League teams tended to keep bigger squads because of COVID. So they weren't loaning out as many players as they had done in previous years. The problem with the loan market is that you don't get an early decision. So if we go to a Manchester United or an Everton or someone like that and say, can we have this young player? They're never going to say yes on day one because they want to see how their own squad develops. We have been in contact with Premier League clubs regarding young players, but equally, you know, these squads they'll be decimated in pre-season because players will be away at the European Championships and they'll join up later. So they'll keep their young players in their own training grounds for longer. So you'll always have that dilemma of whether you hold off in the hope that you'll get a young player on loan against possibly one that you can sign on a permanent basis. And so that's the dilemma that we'll face this window. But, you know, hopefully we'll get those decisions right.